Alright, hey everyone, welcome to... This is gonna be the last episode of this whole series. I honestly don't have enough time before school starts to just finish all of this, the kit, right? So this video I'm just gonna go over all the scripts we have and just reiterate over important things. As well as, at the end, I'm gonna open source all of this so y'all can use the scripts as you want and things like that. So let's get into the video. So the first thing I want to note for y'all is how to actually reset data. So you'll notice, remember the profile store right here, we have our little key. If you want to reset data, you can just change the store name to any other data you want. So we can just change this to like player store 7 and it'll reset our data. So if we play the game, you notice that our plot is empty and we have a default amount of coins. So you can go over here to seeds and we can buy some seeds, like so. If you go to garden, you'll notice the highlight works whenever we equip our seeds and you can plant them. And as you can see, it has a little effect. You can see we print out sort of the mutations that we have. And if we harvest these, notice that the mutation applies on the tool that we planted. If you go to sell, you can view our fruit wharf, which scales proportionately based on the mutations we have. So yeah. And let's say we plant some tomato seeds, like so. And you see that it plants, it slowly starts to grow. And the growth time is based on our module that we made called SeedData and Tomato Seed. So you see that the growth time is around 2 minutes for our tomato seed. And since there are sort of 3 harvests, or 2 tomatoes you can harvest from here, every time you harvest a fruit, it'll take 10 seconds for it to regrow again. So yeah. And if we stop the game, let me go over all of the scripts again. So first off, let's start off with data service. So this script is pretty simple. We have a function called getData, which gets our data, and our sort of whole and knit function right here, which handles the player actually joining the game, leaving the game. And if the player is already in the game, we'll just loop through all the players and do the player added function, which player added essentially loads our data, sets an attribute called data load to true, and runs the data loaded function, which then handles everything that will happen once our data is loaded. So okay, so money service, it creates our little leader stats that we see up here, which shows our shekels that we have, as well as loading our plot, which are these things right here, the plots. And it's also checking whenever the character loads into the game. And okay, it's telling the inventory service, okay, our character is loaded in, what do we want to do with that? Like so. And of course, when the player leaves, we just end the session, which saves our data and things like that, and runs the player remove function in the plot service. So if we go to plot service right here, or let's do money service first. You notice that, I mentioned this in previous videos, but we have a little collapse arrow right here, which you can use to just collapse all of the lines that you don't want to read. Because if you just expand all of these, the script's going to be long and you don't know what each function does. You want to be able to locate them easily, things like that. So we have a function called update shekel count right here, which essentially gets our actual player data shekels and updates the visual indicator of it, which in this case is our leader stats. And in here, when our data is loaded, we create the shekels and we update it based on our non-visible data, which is the profile data, the data that we actually save. So once again, the profile data that shekels is the actual value, and the leader stat shekels is the visual indicator that other players can see what or the amount of shekels you have. And let's go over here to our give money. this is pretty self-explanatory. Give money function is used whenever you want to either give or subtract money from the player. So you can just change this function to service dot, let's say increment money or things like that, or let's say change money, like so. But in this case, we just said give money. So we get our data, we update the shekels, and then we update the shekel count, which updates our visual indicator. And in our function service.net, oh, I want to mention that the net function is called whenever the game runs or starts to run. So if any module has an init function, the init function will be called. For example, our data service has an init function, and our money service has an init function. So when we initiate this module, it checks for when we want to sell an item, the onServe event. And over here we have okay. We have our little conditionals right here, and we'll say okay, if we want to bulk sell equipped item, then we have two different actions for that. And yeah, that should be pretty much it for our money service. Now plot service is sort of the bulk, not really bulk, but it's a really important feature of this Grow Garden game, which is pretty obvious. So let's collapse all of these scripts right here and go over them. So location is within plot. This function is used whenever we want to plant a seed. So we're checking okay, we want to get our plot model and the location of the seed that we want to plant. So we found right soil, because right soil is the model which contains all of the available planting spots that we want to plant for. And we say okay, we want to get the children of these and we want to raycast downwards. And yeah, if the plot or the place that we want to plant is within the right soil part, which in this case is within all of the parts in right soil, it will return true because the location is valid, like so. Once again, I want to note for y'all the importance of documentation, right? So we go over here and we look up raycasting on Roblox. Documentation tells you everything you need to know about raycasting, and it goes into really specific detail about it. So if you're ever confused about Roblox service and things like that, always refer to documentation or dev4. They both help you a lot. So getMaxPlots obviously returns the maximum amount of plots that we have, which is 6 in this case. And getPlot just returns the plot of the player we're trying to see. So okay, if the plot's owner is the player user ID, then we can return the plot. Otherwise, we just return no, because there's no plot for that player. And getAvailablePlot is used whenever the player first joins the game. We want to assign a plot to the player, which is what this function is used for. And yeah, that's that function. Alright, next up is our function of createServerModel. This is really important because let's say we join the game, right? If you recall, we have a Planted Seeds folder which has two folders in there, the client and the server. The createServerModel creates all of these models that you see in here, which are then replicated over to the client. So, knowing that, this is going to be easier for me to explain. We have player, the key, which is the name of the plant, and any extra data we want. So remember, the key always looks like this. So we're getting the true name of the plant, which is the carrot in this case, if we have a key like this. And we're also going to want to find the corresponding plant model, which is this right here. So if we find it, then we're going to clone the server model, and we're just going to set all of the sort of attributes that we want. And then we're going to scale the server model to the plant size that we saved it as. And we're going to clone all of the configurations that we have. So we have fruits, date planted, growth percentage, last growth increment, and plant size. So we're just updating all of these, or changing these. And in here, we're detecting, okay, whenever the fruit config changes, then we're going to update it in the actual save data that we have. And same thing right here. So that should be pretty much it for that. Oh, multi-harvest is when a plant has multiple fruits, like a tomato or cacao seed. And single harvest, or when multi-harvest is set to false, is when we have a single harvest fruit. Like let's say a carrot or maybe like a sugarcane plant, which only has one harvestable thing. And in here, we're saving our location of the plant based on the relative location to the plot. So I mentioned this in the previous video, but the reason we do that is because, okay, let's say we plant our seed right here, right? And then if we load in the next game, what if our plot's right here? We don't want our seed to be in the same location right here. We want it to be relative to the plot that we saved it as. So let's say, okay, this is the plot. If we plant the seed right here, then if we spawn over here next time, the seed is going to be right here, relative to the plot. So yeah, that's the reason for deserializing the C-frame and serializing them. And also the reason for that is because we can't really save C-frames in data stores. So we need to convert them into a sort of table value, like so. And yeah, that's it for the create server model. And for update plot, pretty much self-explanatory. Whenever a seed's planted, then we just create a server model, like so. And now data loaded. Okay. This is where our getAvailaBlePlot function comes into play. Whenever the player's data is loaded, we'll get an available plot, and if we find it, then we'll just set the plot taken to true and set the owner of it to our player. And we're going to update the display of it, which in this case is this little sign right here. Because if you remember, if you play the game, you see that the plot gets updated, like so. And then we're going to load our plot first, because whenever the player loads in, we want to actually load all of the plants in here, the server models. So we just do create server model for all of those. And when the player leaves the game, we will check for the plot that they had assigned to them, reset everything, as well as clear all of the plants that we had. And we're checking, okay, if the owner of it is a player user ID, and if you recall right here, we set the owner right here. And then it'll just destroy the plant, like so. And finally, in our init function, this handles the growing seeds and fruits, as well as the offline growing, based on the date planted that we have. So let's say you leave the game, right? And let's say you leave the game for 10 minutes. If you rejoin, your plant should be fully grown if the growth time is around 2 minutes. Right here. So this is how that works. That's why date planted is important. Because date planted right here is just os.clock or os.time, which is the universal sort of server time that relates to the time of day that you're at. So right here just handles offline growing. It loops through all the seeds that we have, and it just handles the growing. So we have growth percentage greater than or equal to 100, so it's fully grown. Then we'll just make the plants visible. Make it to where if you can harvest it or you can't harvest it. And here, this is single harvest, like so. And otherwise, if it's not fully grown, we're gonna handle the growing of it right here. Like so. And that's it for our plot service. Alright, next up, we still need to talk about our seed service, our harvest service, the inventory, and the mutation service. So let's go over the seed service really quickly. Or no, let's go ahead and just do the mutation service, which is pretty small for the most part. So, as I mentioned at the start of the video, I didn't have I don't have time to finish this whole kit, but it should be a good start for y'all to just learn scripting in general and how to make a game similar to Grow Garden. Obviously, if y'all follow the series, y'all can most likely expand on the scripts, so yeah. So in here, we just have get random growth mutation. As you can see, this is all just like a 50-50 chance right now for you to get golden. If you want to make it rare, it changes to 1-1, like so. But yeah, this just returns your mutations. And now, in our harvest service, this handles harvesting the plants. So if you remember, you can join the game, and you can harvest the crops, like so. Tomato, and yeah. So that's what the harvest service is for. So if I join the game, since harvesting seeds is handled on the client right here, so you see that, okay, harvest right here. Wait a minute, right here, here we go. Harvesting is handled on the client right here. So because of that, we want to actually add sanity checks on the server, because we don't want players to be able to harvest from like half a mile away if they're exploiting. That's stupid. So we have a function called isWithinHarvestBounds, which checks how far the player is away from the actual plant that we want to harvest. And if they're within the threshold, then we'll just return true. Otherwise, we'll return false. And the bulk of the script right here is the function for harvesting, which handles multi-harvest and single harvesting. Pretty self-explanatory. If it's within the bounds, then we harvest the fruit and things like that. And I added another part in here throughout the video just for stealing in the future if you want to. And yeah, that's pretty much the harvesting part. And now in the init function, this is when we listen for when we want to harvest the fruit, and we run the functions accordingly. And you see in the script, we don't have a part where we actually give the fruit, because we do that in the inventory service.getFruit function. So if we go to inventory service, and let's collapse all of these, you see that it's pretty organized for the most part. So we have a generate fruit key, a give fruit function, remove item, create new tool, inventory updated, and character added. So whenever the character is added, we just want to create all the tools for that character in here. And create a tool, we'll check if they're a seed, otherwise they're fruits right here. And then we clone the tools accordingly, like so. And in here, we have our inventory updated function. So whenever any items get updated, we'll want to just do so accordingly. So if it's a seed, if let's say we have a seed, right? If we plant a seed, we're gonna check if the seed is already gone, or it's just decreased by 1 or something. So we'll update the count like so. And yeah, that's what this is for. And over here, we're checking if it's like a gear or anything like that, and we're creating the new tool. Now, remove item. Okay, let's say that we planted a seed and we run out, right? So right here, if the seed's value equal to 0, then we'll remove the item. Otherwise, we're just updating the backpack. And if we want to remove it, we'll check for if it's in the backpack or the character. Well, backpack and the character. Which is why we have a bunch of checks right here. And now, in the give fruit function, this is where we handle giving the player the actual fruit. So, right here, we save it, and then we save the inventory, the fruit key, to the string.save, string to save, which would look something like this right here. And yeah, that's pretty much it for our services. Or actually no, we still have one more we didn't go through, which is our seed service. This is really important because it handles planting seeds. So let's see. right here, okay, let's say that the player's trying to plant a seed. We don't want the player to be able to plant extremely close to the seed that's already been planted, which is why we have this function right here, handling that. So if it's too close to the plant, we don't want it to plant the seed. So right here, we're checking, okay, we want to plant the seed. And we're saying, okay, if the player is too close to another plant, we can notify the player that they're too close, right here. Otherwise, we'll just remove the seed, like one seed, from the player's inventory. And then we're getting the location to save relative to the plot. Like so. And then we're generating a new plant key. And then we're saving everything right here. And this is just our little plant effect that we have. And now that our seed is planted, we want to run the seed planted function in our plot service. So if you recall, it's right here, update plot, and seed planted. We create the server model. And yeah. And this is when you want to buy seed. Okay, if you want to buy a seed, then we're decreasing the stock, and we're giving the player seed, like so. And then we're updating the player's inventory. And here, we're just restocking seeds based on the timer. This handles the buying seeds, and this is just our restock timer, like so. And yeah, that's pretty much all of our services. Hopefully I explained it in a way that's much easier to understand. If I didn't, please put in the comments and I can help you a little bit. But I don't want to handhold, if that's sort of the right way to put it. The way I explained it is just for y'all to hopefully understand it and hopefully learn how to script it. Copying and pasting isn't a good way to learn. Oh, actually, it is a good way to learn, but you have to understand what you're copying and pasting. So yeah. Now that that's done, let's go through our server storage part, which is sort of our seeds that we clone into the player whenever we buy a seed. So, if you recall in our inventory service right here, we have a seed right here, and we also have a SeedActivator module that we clone every time the seed's added. So, essentially what this is that whenever we click with our tool, we get where we want to plant the seed, and then we check if the seed is actually valid. And this is what all of this is for, right? This is the bulk of our seed planting system, as far as tool things go. So yeah, if all of the conditions are met, we'll just plant the seed. So now that's done, we can go through our modules really briefly. Okay, so we have PlantEffect, obviously for planting the seed, which this is just called right here in our seed service. And yeah. Oh, I also want to note the reason for our scale value right here is because we can't really scale models using Tween Service. So we're going to need to create a mock value for scaling, right? And then we'll scale it to the mock value and tween the scale value, because you can tween number values, just not models. So while the tween is happening, we're detecting when the values change, and then we can scale the model accordingly. And let's see what else. We have format number, which is just the module that we have for formatting commas. And here is our mutation effects. Apply tool effect, remove effect, and apply effect. Pretty self-explanatory. And okay, this is sort of the hardest part to understand, right? So all I want you to know is that this essentially handles separating the string that we have saved, mutations and fruit name and the weight, into understandable scripting values. So for example, our mutations are separated into an array, and our fruit name is separated into a string, and our weight is separated into a number, is what this does for us. And GetFruitValue obviously gets the fruit value, pretty self-explanatory, based on mutations and things like that. So say if you go to mutation, the value gets multiplied by 20, rainbow, it gets multiplied by 50. In our seed data, pretty self-explanatory. We can increment however we want, randomly get stock count, get our seed order. So this is really important because this helps the UI understand what seeds we want in the shop. So let's say you add a new seed in here called like bamboo seed. The UI won't recognize this unless you add it in our seed order, right? And of course you want to change the name of this to whatever the actual name is, so bamboo in this case. So that's that for our modules. Pretty self-explanatory. And let's see what else we have. Oh, right. Okay, so let's look at our SeedToolVisual script. If you open our script, I already made a comment here. It's just for displaying the player's plot when they're holding a tool. So what I mean by that is, let's say the player is holding a tomato seed. Let's buy tomato seed. If you're holding the seed, you'll see that the plot gets highlighted red, indicating where you can actually plant the seed. Because if you, let's say we click out here, I'm clicking right here, you can't plant it out here, you can't plant it on top of this, but you can plant them right here, and you can't plant them too close on each other. So yeah. Alright. And the way we do that is we have a highlight right here, and we set the adornee to the player's right soil, because that's where all of the bulk of our plot is at. And yeah, whenever a character gets added and it's a seed, then we want to screen it. Otherwise, if it's removed, we want to screen it out, like so. And yeah, that's pretty much that. And now, Satchel and ResetDisable are both open source things. Satchel is for the custom backpack, and ResetDisable is just for resetting or disabling the reset functionality. So we press the save, you'll see that we can't respawn. Like so, you can't unalive yourself. And in our PromptClient, this is where we handle all of the prompts. So okay, let's say we want to harvest. We can harvest, like so. Prompt hidden, we want to set the harvest adornee to nil. These lines right here are for the highlight portion of our plants. So you see that, okay, we go over here, the highlight works on here, highlight, etc. And now, when we trigger the prompt, you see that, okay, this is for interacting with NPCs. So, let's say we talk to this NPC right here, seeds. This is for enabling the UI for this, and enabling the UI for this, like so. And this is for harvesting the prompt, or harvesting the plants, like so. Next up we have our GetMouseCF, which the only reason we use this is for the PlantEffect, which just gets where we want to plant our seed. So yeah, that's pretty much that. And now ClientEffects is just handles all of our client effects, which in this case we only had one, which is for planting. So that's that. We cached all the modules. So if you want to add like another effect called PlantEffect 2, you can just say fire all clients PlantEffect 2, like so. So right here you can just say PlantEffect 2 and it'll work. So yeah, that's it. And now crop replicator. So if you remember, we have two folders in Planted Seeds. One for our server model and one for our client model. So this just handles whenever a child gets added to our server folder right here, and we want to clone the client model respectively, like so. So this is what that does. It creates a visual for the server models that you can actually look at and see. So you see that, okay, this is our visuals for tomatoes, our visuals for the cacao seeds, and our visuals for carrots, like so. So yeah, right here, whenever a child gets added, we clone the client model, we scale it based on the size. And here, we're just setting all of the values, the transparency to 1. Because this is how we're going to animate the sort of cartoony animation that we want. And okay, whenever our growth percentage is changed, right here, we'll just animate them based on a pure percentage. And I'll go over that what that is later. And if the value is 100, then we'll set fully grown to true. And this is when we can harvest the plants. And this is for mutations, like so. So, a brief overview of what these little attributes that we have are is right here in our client models. So you see right here, we have a pure percentage. So let's say our growth percentage is 75. This part isn't gonna appear yet until the growth percentage reaches 80. This is how you animate the sort of things growing in. So let's say we have a tomato seed. So we have our little fruit right here. Let's see. Right here, so appear percentage 90 and appear percentage 5. So let's say the growth percentage is at 10, so this is gonna appear, and let's see, nothing else should be, yeah, both of these should appear. Because this is 10 and this is 5, so they should be animated in. Which is what you want. So remember to always put appear percentage on the things you want to be animated in, but never put it on the fruits. Because on the fruits, they're just gonna be toggled in or cloned in. Which if you look right here, harvestable changed, you see that the fruit is actually cloned in and this the C-frame is set. So yeah, that's that. And finally, the last part of this sort of overview of the scripts again is our UI, which is fairly simple. So we have events over here that are called from our PromptClient right here, fire and fire bindable events. And we have button CPs. So garden CP, we have our cell CP and our cell CP and our seeds TP, which is all right here. And now our SeedFrame Handler is where we update the list right here. And we toggle it out. We exit. And right here is the bulk of our client restocking timer. So okay. We restocked everything. If the current stock of it is changed, then we're just going to update the stock display, like so. So right here, server info is just this right here. Our modules, SeedData, and our current stock right here. So whenever this is changed, it's just going to update it, like so. And yeah, that's pretty much that. Oh, and where the buying seeds is handled is right here. Buying seed, seed name, like so. And SellFrame, this is pretty easy to understand. We have, let me collapse all these for you. So this is for making the SellFrame visible. This is for when we want to exit out of it. And functionality part is right here. So we want to sell our equipped, which we want to fire server equipped item for selling, bulk sell, and finding the worth of it, which we have our handy function for fruit parsing and GetFruitValue. And we have our format number, which adds the commas and things like that. So yeah. And now in our Sheckles Updater, this is where we handle all of our visuals for Sheckles right here. So let's say we buy some seeds, right? You'll notice that there's a little animation that pops up based on how many we're sort of buying right now. And right here, when we sell it, you see fruit worth sort of animates up, sell equipped, and bulk sell, like so. And that's all handled through this right here. So whenever our leader stats is changed, we're checking our last value, which we have made a little mock value right here, and then we're updating it. So we're checking, okay, if the difference is less than 0, then we know it's a negative, we lost money. And if otherwise, we gained money. And then we're just cloning the frame and retweeting it, animating it so it sort of fades upward, fades out upward. And right here, whenever the values change, we're going to format the number, which adds our commas and our little cash symbol at the end. And that should be pretty much it for this sort of wrap-up video, review video on all of the code. So with that being said, all of this is going to be open sourced in the Discord. I'll have a link in the description. And sorry for not being able to sort of put out daily videos. I've just been really busy lately. But this is all going to be open sourced. And please leave a like, comment, subscribe. Thank you for watching this whole series. And yeah, I'll see y'all in the next series, whenever that is. Thank you for watching.